Hi, everyone. I'm Val Swisher, CEO of Content Roles, and I'm here to talk to you about creating personalized experiences using structured content. Just a little bit about me. I believe that content should be easy to read, efficient to create, and effective to translate. And that's sort of the three tenets of Content Rules. And recently released my fourth book, which is about this very topic, the personalization paradox, why companies fail and how to succeed at delivering personalized experiences at scale. I own a company called Content Rules. We do all things content from strategy a number of years for mostly architecture, content reuse, taxonomy, metadata, workflow, and often will also help with writing and editing and content optimization. So that's just a little bit about me and my company. So let's just get right to it. What is a personalized experience? It's when we deliver the right content to the right person at the right time, on the right device, in the language of their choice. I figure you heard that already. We'll move on to here. So since we make that information easy to find, we can go way back to the very first century AD to find the first evidence of wanting to make information easy to find. And that was with a person named Pliny the Elder. And he wrote something called The Natural History in 37 books. And book one is nothing more than a table of contents for the other 36 books. So really, since we started creating content, it's almost like, what's the point of having content if people cannot find it? So as these went on, we created the first English index in 1575 in the card catalog. And in the 1990s, probably 1980s, we were able to do automated tables of contents, lists of figures, lists of tables, indexes. All of these things are ways to help people locate information quickly. Okay, so 21st century findability. So what's different today? Well, what's different today is rather than having people search for information and putting the onus on the person to find it, what we're trying to do today is push the correct information to someone based on information that we know about them. So rather than people trying to figure it out, we're trying to figure it out in advance. Then we're trying to send it to them before they even know that this is something that they need or want. The only way to do this and to do this at scale is to base the entire system on structured content and automation. So the goal of personalized experiences is to make sure we can meet the customer needs, get them the information that they need in an efficient way. And the ultimate goal is to be able to do this at scale. So not a one-off, but really scale it up. And herein lies the paradox, because in order to create personalized experience, you need to structure the content. Then you need to about the content. And this doesn't necessarily make sense. If I want to make a personalized experience, I'm going to standardize my content. But it's the only way to do it at scale. So first of all, especially in this group, I'm sure you all understand what structure is. You need to structure the content so that it is reusable, so that it can be mixed and matched, and it's easy to locate. The idea behind this is I know a certain amount of information about the person who is looking for the content, And at the point of delivery, I'm going to build a personalized output for just that person. So I need to have a level of granularity in my components that will allow me to mix and match them to create the content that this person needs. And I need to make sure that everything is written in a reusable way. This is not something we ever learned. It's not something we ever learned in school. It's something that is new to most writers, how to write for reuse. You cannot deliver a personalized experience for every single experience. That doesn't scale. That's not sustainable. We need to make sure that all of that content holds together. It needs to appear unified, whether the content is from a component or two that are reused or not reused. And we have to have a single source of truth. These are all things that must be the case in order to deliver a personalized experience at scale. So this is hopefully review for everyone, but needs to be said. We're going to create content using very small chunks of information, and then we are going to mix and match them to build personalized outputs. We're going to use CCMS, all going to use Tritium Docs, my favorite CCMS. We're going to create, store, update, translate all of that content one time. And then we're going to mix and match it in different ways to build this personalized experience. The only way to do it at scale. Obviously, the content has to be separate from the format because we have committed to delivering the right content to the right person on the right device in the language of their choice. So obviously, we need to do this in a standardized way so that we can flow that very same content into any design, any channel, any type of output we need. And that delivery, that information is built at the point of delivery. We take all of our components, we tag them, we make sure they're findable, we store them in our CCMS, and then we can output to different people exactly the components they need. Pretty straightforward. Here comes the paradox, though. If you want to be successful doing this, which is literally mixing and matching pieces of content, everything about that content must be standardized. And this is something that when I work with customers, it seems to take them a little bit of time to understand. If we don't standardize absolutely everything about the content, sure, we can put those pieces together, we can mix and match them, we can deliver them to whatever type of device in whatever language, but it doesn't mean that as an experience, it's going to make sense. If we don't all follow the same rules surrounding our content, then when we go to mix and match them, it's just going to be a big pile of confusing words and sentences. So if we want to be successful, everything needs to be standardized. And when I say everything, I really mean everything. So there are 5 different dimensions of our content that need to be standardized, and all 5 are important. Output types, words, sentences, paragraphs, and components. So this is every single aspect of the components that we're creating, of the topics that we're writing, of the sentences that we're writing, of the words that we're using, must be standardized so that everyone creating content follows the same rules. So that at the end, when I go to build these experiences at the point of delivery, I end up with a cohesive experience rather than a disjointed mumble. So output types are a bit of an outlier in this model of dimensions, and I'll explain why. An output type determines what content to deliver, in what order, to produce that final deliverable, that final experience. It is the end product. And right now, where technology is today, we have to standardize and define those output types. So, for example, perhaps it's a knowledge base article. We're going to define a knowledge base article, what it is. We're going to, in our case, use a map. And we're going to decide this is what comes first, this is what comes second in a knowledge base article. Perhaps we have a title, then we have a short description of the article, and perhaps we have a very short overview, and then we have steps. We need the deliverables to be consistent so they're defined, and the byproduct is really being able to create an expectation so that when a customer has that information, they know exactly where to look for exactly what piece of information they need. In the future, when our content is delivered via AI systems, the need for output types will by and large go away. AI systems will be able to put together information on the fly and create whatever type of final deliverable we need at that moment in time. But using today's technology, we need to standardize those output types, consistency and usability. So now what I want to do, that the output types are really the largest thing, right? That's the information product, the end asset. Now I want to go all the way down to the very, very smallest piece of information that we need to standardize. And you can think of this kind of like Russian nesting dolls, the matryoshka dolls, where you have a big doll, a smaller doll, smaller doll, small doll, and they all nest inside each other. And your words are the very, very first, smallest little doll in that whole set. If you've ever heard me speak, you will know that I am really like a maniac about terminology. I really think that we have to standardize our terminology. We all need to use the same word to mean the same thing. And if you're going to create a personalized experience at scale, and remember, what we're doing is we have lots of people creating content and we are mixing and matching it at the point of delivery to create that set, that experience, that output type. So if we don't all use the same words to mean the same things, we're going to have a lot of confusion. And it amazes me when I work with customers, even if they're not trying to personalize content, they're only trying to componentize their content and reuse their content and use data and have a single source of truth, that they don't necessarily realize that if one person calls the animal a dog and another person calls the animal a canine and another person calls the animal hound or whatever, and I go to put all of these pieces together, our readers are going to be really confused. So we have to use the very same words over and over and over again in order to provide a consistent experience that's personalized and understandable. So that's the first little piece. If we were to go out to the next size doll, what we want to do now is standardize our sentences. So we're going to standardize the words we use, and now we need to standardize the way we use those words. Everyone needs to follow the same grammar and the same style rules. Otherwise, think of it this way. As I combine all of these different pieces together, I could have some people writing in the past tense, some people writing in the future tense, some people writing in the present tense. And if I go to combine these pieces, pity the poor person trying to understand whether they're coming or going. Everyone has to follow the same rules. We need to say the same thing the same way every time we say it. And not only is this going to help us to produce personalized experiences at scale that are understandable, it's going to provide a whole other host of benefits, the most pertinent one being translation. Say the same thing the same way every time I say it, bar none, without wavering, then the amount of translation I need to do goes way down, and the rest of that translation goes way down. There are, I think I once counted, 30 ways to say click OK. Click OK, select OK, tap OK, press OK, hit OK, which is translatable, click the OK button, select the OK button, click on the button. There are so many ways, and you could use all of them. With click OK, it's likely that someone will understand and follow along regardless of which way you say it. But of course, if you're translating it in languages and you 31 different ways you said it, you're going to spend a lot of money rather than just click OK. So we'll leave that there. In order to, all right. Next, we're going out our nesting dolls. Find your brand, where you define the tone and the voice of your content. It's really in the combination of those sentences that that experience of brand comes across. Things even like, are you going to use short sentences all the time, or are you going to vary your sentence size, sentence length? This is actually, within a paragraph, part of what helps you define your tone and voice. And there are a variety of components, not content components, but aspects to tone and voice. One of them that we focus on a lot is formality. How formal is your tone with your customers. Way back when I started as a technical writer, many years ago, technology was new, and we used a very formal tone of voice. There were no contractions. We spoke in the third person, and we would use the most complicated words to say whatever it is we needed to say, because this was serious business. Luckily, I'm happy to say that we no longer feel that way. Most of my customers tend to use a much more informal tone of voice. It depends on the vertical, of course. Certain verticals like finance, pharma for sure, tend to follow a more serious formal tone of voice. But this is where you get to define that. And if you think about that personalized experience, what you want to make sure is that your brand is followed through in terms of all of your content. Because again, I'll go back to this over and over again, you're mixing and matching pieces of content. So if one person is writing in a very formal tone of voice and another person is writing using a very familiar voice, and you try to put these things together, it's just disjointed. People are not going to understand what it is you're trying to get across. You want to make sure that your brand really does come through at every opportunity. All right, so we had output types, which is an outlier. Words, how you use those words in terms of sentences, how you build paragraphs using those sentences. The next thing that we need to standardize is a component. And a component is an independent unit of content. A component needs to be able to stand on its own. It's the level that I could just have a single component answer a question or be that piece of personalized information someone needs. At the same time, components all need to be able to combine with other components so that I can deliver an experience. So perhaps I have some tasks, and those tasks need to be able to be combined with some concepts. If some people write concepts and tasks in the same component, and I have seen this done, and you probably have too, and other people keep them separate. I mean, I'm being very, very simple here. And, a task is a task and a concept is a concept. I can't mix and match across. It's not going to make any sense. I need to make sure that my components are discrete, that they're discrete. And I need to make sure that they can be combined with other components. So it needs to be defined. Everyone needs to understand, for this type of component, this is what goes into it. These are the mandatory elements in your component. These are optional. It goes in this order. You don't change it. We all march to the same drum. Again, if I don't, it's not going to make any sense. It's just not going to make any sense. Okay, so we've done the 5 dimensions, right? Now, what I want to talk about a bit is taxonomy and metadata, because they are a crucial aspect of being able to locate and mix and match the information. Taxonomy is a system of classification. By now, you've probably heard a lot about taxonomy, but I will say it anyway. It is a way to classify your information. Taxonomies can be flat. They can be multifaceted and quite hierarchical. The main thing with your taxonomy is that it needs to be semantic. You want to use words where you're organizing your content that make sense to people. Using things like heading 1, heading 2, that doesn't make sense to people. We need to make sure that they're semantic, and we need to organize our content so that we can find it later. And then the metadata are the tags that are stored with the component itself. So the metadata is the information about the information. The example that I like to use is this piece of clothing. I can describe this piece of clothing in a variety of ways. I can say it's blue, I can say it's cotton, I can say it's a t-shirt, perhaps I can say it's a size medium, whatever it is. When I tag it, then that descriptive information stays with it. And it allows a writer and a system to be able to locate that information so that it can be incorporated into that deliverable that's being produced. So again, the whole idea behind personalization at scale is to have very small pieces of information that are found automatically, found via machine, and put together in the right order and read as a whole. And this is all done at the point of delivery. So the more robust my metadata, the better my machines will be able to find it. You need it so that it can be automated. It's the onus is on the delivery system to match the information about the customer with the information about the content. What I'm not going over in this particular presentation is, how do we know about the customer? What do we know about the customer? And there are I'll mention it here so that it's covered. There are books and books about this. There are really 3 different ways that we know information about the person and what they need at that moment in time. The first is they've told us. So perhaps we've given them a series of questions. What is it that you're interested in today? The example I often use is, let's say I needed to change the battery in the key fob of, I don't know, a Honda. I'm trying to think of a model that would be in Europe. Here we would call it a Honda Fit. I think it's called a Honda Jazz, at least in Asia. Anyway, particular car. And let's say that the car is a 2019, and I have the key fob, and I need to change the battery in just that key fob. Well, one thing I could do is I could ask the customer, what kind of car do you have? And they could type it in or select from a drop down, what year, what model, what are you trying to do? So the person has given us all of the information, and then we can go out and automatically get that information, build that deliverable, and present it. If that person has gone to the Honda site, and I'm not picking on Honda, I happen to have a Honda Fit, so I obviously like the car. Honda knows a lot about me, and they know a lot about my car because I bought it from them. So they know the vehicle identification number. I've probably created an account. So if I go out to their website and I search change battery in key fob or key fob battery, whatever, it should automatically know, oh, this person has a 2019 Honda Fit, this model, and I'm only going to deliver that one piece of information to them. I'm not going to say, here's everything you need to know about the Honda Fit, but we're afraid to ask. I'm not going to say, here's how you change the battery in every single model that Honda produced in every year. I'm not going to make them search anymore because I know all of this information about the car they have. So one is I've asked and they've told me. Two is I already know because they bought the product from me. And then the third way that a system might know what to deliver to someone is the creepy way, which is they've been following you. So we could get into GDPR and all of the rights and wrongs about systems knowing who we are and what we want and what we need and anticipating it, and whether or not Facebook does a good job of showing me the ads that are of interest to me. That's not the point. The point is, the third way that companies know what to give you is because they've been watching. They're not always right. In my case, they're often wrong, but that's the third way. And a lot of marketing and ad content is based on this third way because they've been watching. They could be watching. I'm trying to think of how that might work in the key fob example, but it could happen. They could see that, oh, I'm buying batteries that go in the key fob. I'm making that up, but that's the third way. So people tell us what they want. We already know because we know all about them. We already know, or we think we know, because we've been watching their activities. That's the other side of it. So went a little off topic there, but that often comes up as a question, so figured I'd answer it in advance. Again, everything needs to be consistent. The content needs to be tagged. The machines need to be able to find it and put it together. We need to do this without people doing the work because it doesn't scale. I can't create an individual piece of content for every single person. There's no way I can do it. I've seen companies try, but it doesn't work. What about external taxonomy tools? This is all the rage now. And of course, Tridian now has an amazing tool that will help you find your content. These taxonomy tools, whether it's the one in Tridian or others, they front end multiple content knowledge systems, and they can aggregate all of the taxonomies together, which is really interesting because sometimes the information that someone wants and needs is not in the repository that we're working in. It's actually in a different repository. They go a step further because they can show relationships among the different pieces of content. They can show the connections. They provide much more robust results in response to looking for content. So if you're really looking to provide a personalized needle in a haystack, then using an external taxonomy or more robust integrated semantic AI tool is going to provide more and better responses. And the thing that I love most about these tools is that they really help you when you don't know what you don't know. So they can create these types of connections and relationships for things that you might not have even thought about. So they are extremely helpful, and they make the finding of exactly the right information someone needs at that moment in time even better. The results are even more specific. All right, so we are headed towards the end of the session. If you do have questions, please feel free to submit them. We have a few here, which I'll get to in a moment. To summarize, delivering a personalized experience means I'm going to deliver the right content to the right person at the right time on the right device in the language of their choice. And I'm going to try to do this in advance of someone even searching for it. I certainly, if they're going to search, don't want someone to have to choose from 10,000 search results. It's a terrible experience. In order to do this successfully, we need to use chunked information. We can't use monolithic long documents. So everything needs to be chunked into reusable components. And then everything about those components needs to be standardized. Terminology, style, grammar, tone of voice, component type, and output type. That way, when those components are mixed and matched at the point of delivery, I always say that, we're not trying to predetermine what these outputs should look like, which is different from what we do today. Today, we predetermine, oh, I need a knowledge base article on how to change the battery in the key fob of a Honda Fit. There's nothing wrong with the knowledge base article, but what I really want are the components that go into it so that I can deliver just what someone needs at that moment in time. It needs to be understandable. It needs to hold together. Standardization is the glue that allows all of your content to hold together as a cohesive unit. Wouldn't it be great if all of the content in your CCMS was so standardized that it all read the same way, it all used the same words, it all fit? Wouldn't that be great? We're not there yet. We're at the point of most companies understanding how to componentize their content, although there are companies that have component content management systems that still don't quite understand how to create components. I have seen 15-page topics because nobody ever taught the writers how to write in this new way. But wouldn't it be great if all of this mixed and matched and worked? Think of all the different types of output you could create if everything was standardized in your CCMS. And then, of course, taxonomy and metadata are important. They're critical to be able to automate that search and delivery of these different pieces of content. My blatant ad here, if you want more information about all of this and how to do it and the steps, you're welcome to get a copy of The Personalization Paradox. You can get it at Amazon or Barnes & Noble, or you can go to contentrules.com/TPP, and we've got some extra little goodies there as well if you decide to purchase it that way. All right, so let's see what questions we have. I'm going to look over here. All right. And if you have a question, please feel free to send it in. Is it fair to say that if clear understanding of terminology matters, that companies should be producing glossaries? At minimum, absolutely, absolutely. Companies should be creating terminology. What's the difference between terminology and a glossary? Terminology is certainly, they're both lists of words. Glossaries tend to have definitions. I go to a glossary to look up a word to get its meaning. Terminology can have definitions. It's usually not used in that way. But the main difference is that, okay, here's the mistake companies make. The mistake companies make is they make a list or a glossary of words that people are allowed to use. And they do not include all the words that people aren't allowed to use. And the words that people are not allowed to use are actually more important than the words you are allowed to use. I need to know, when I go to look up a word as a writer, if I don't find it, I am likely to assume that that word is perfectly okay. Think about it. If it's not in the list, I guess it's okay. Unless I can give someone the synonym or the correct term, they'll never know. Just because it doesn't exist in the glossary or in the terminology doesn't mean you can't use it. It just means it's not there. So it's really important, more important, to say you're not allowed to use canine, you're not allowed to use hound, you're not allowed to use whatever. You always have to use dog. It's not okay to just say dog, and here's what a dog is. A dog is a canine. You're not allowed to, it's not useful. So yes, companies should absolutely be putting together terminology. My hunch is that if you're translating, then at minimum, there is some source terminology of words that have been translated. And what I would recommend you do from there is fill in the words people aren't supposed to use. So if I'm not supposed to use canine, I need to be able to search on canine and see, oh, that's disallowed. Instead, I need to use this other word. So that's the danger. And that's what I see companies do. They'll start creating just a list of terms, but they'll never tell people, don't use this other one. So we can't make the assumption that if someone goes to look for a word and they don't find it, they'll automatically know they're not supposed to use it. It's the opposite. If I don't find it, you don't tell me I can't use it, I'm going to assume I can use it. So the preferred term is critical, but all of the disallowed terms are even more important. So hopefully that answers the question. Next question. When creating metadata tags, do you have any suggestions or guidance on when or whether to use modifiers such as adjectives or adverbs versus nouns? So adjectives are really critical tags. In fact, adjectives combined with the noun is the best way to narrow down the choices of what is the correct piece of content. If I just use the example of the shirt, if I just tagged it with shirt and I put it in a taxonomy that had clothing, and maybe it had men's clothing or women's clothing or summer clothing, if it's a short sleeve shirt or whatever, saying something is a blue shirt is going to get me closer to that particular item. And saying something that is a blue cotton shirt is going to get me even closer to that particular item. So I think that using modifiers is very important. I think that the combination of your taxonomy, which is often noun-based, and your metadata, which often includes adjectives, probably helps most clearly with your organization. But yeah, I would say using both is important. All right, next question. What do you think about tailoring content so that it presents differently for every single person? Well, I think that that's where we're going, and that's what people are expecting. So Some of us call it the Amazon experience. When I log into Amazon, it shows me all kinds of things that it probably doesn't show you. It's tailored to me. It's tailored to all the other things I have purchased on Amazon. And if you bought this, then you probably are interested in this and this and this. Using structured content, using DITA, where the format is separate from the content itself, allows me to present that content in different ways for different experiences. So I think that that's where we're going. I think that that's what people expect. I'm not sure that in the technical content arena, anyone's really doing it or doing it well at this point. People often say, who's doing it well? Well, Amazon does a pretty good job, but that's not technical content. I'm trying to think of perhaps a knowledge base that presents content in advance, guessing what we need, as well as Amazon guesses what I don't need, but I'm going to buy, which is a terrible thing. That's why they're so good at what they do. Okay, this is a long one. It seems highly prescriptivist and difficult to put together a list of all not allowed words. When preparing terminology, would it be better to provide the allowed term and then explain, define the tone? For example, dog. We call this animal by its common name because we provide toys for pets. We are not providing medical information for veterinarians. Oh, this is such a good point. Whoever sent in this point, bravo. It is really hard to put together a list of all the not allowed words. And if we're talking about something like a dog where I really can explain, I selected this word and here's why, by all means, providing that information is going to be much better than saying you can't use canine, you can't use hound, you can't use puppy, you can't use golden retriever or whatever. I agree, and that's nirvana and bravo, yes. Unfortunately, often we make a decision on what terms we'll use, not necessarily based on something so clear cut. And the danger that we find that you get to is I'll go back to the example I'm using because I'm not thinking on the fly of a new example. If I only look up canine and I don't see canine listed, what am I going to do next? And I think if we polled a bunch of technical writers, they would say, oh, well, if I don't see it listed, I'm going to use it. It's counterintuitive, but we either give people the disallowed words or they have to figure it out. So building terminology that includes disallowed words is not a simple task. Building your terminology is not a simple task to begin with, but building terminology that includes the disallowed words is a big task, not a small task. And what we really want to do is automate that task as much as we possibly can. And there are different tools out there to help with this. I think both is a great way to go. If there's a reason we selected a particular term and we can provide that reason, then by all means, let's do that. Because the more information we provide to someone who's creating content, the better that content's going to be. But to the extent that we can provide disallowed words, I think we should. The tools on the market that do this automatically, the tools on the market that review content that someone has created and compare it to the terminology and flag disallowed terms, that type of tool needs to have the list of disallowed terms. because the software is going to look for the disallowed terms, compare it to the terminology, and then suggest the preferred term. So whoever wrote this, I love it. Absolutely spot on. I would say it's sort of not an either or, but it's a both if we can. And terminology is the gift that keeps on giving. Terminology is never done. Your words are always evolving. If not, then your brand and your company is stagnant. So terminology is not a one and done type of thing. Neither is your content strategy. You can't create a content strategy and then think that you're never going to need to create another type of model. It's never a one and done, but terminology really is the gift that keeps on giving. It's truly never finished. Okay. Do you think structuring content will become more or less important with the arrival of AI? So AI, AI knows nothing when you first stand up a cognitive system. It doesn't come knowing anything in advance. And in order to stand up a cognitive system, you need to do a number of things. Most of the steps you need to do, which involve curating content, having the machine ingest the content, all of this, all lead to training the engine. While AI systems have great machine learning, you need to start it off. You need to start it off with ground truth, with question and answer pairs that the machine goes through and learns, oh, this is the answer to this. This is the answer to that. This is not the answer to this or that. So the best kind of content you can use to train an AI engine is structured content, because it is the most specific training content you can have. So I think that structuring content is going to be critical as we start to stand up these AI systems. So I don't think that the notion of structuring content is going away anytime soon. So that's my thoughts about that. Okay, I don't think we have any more questions. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for spending time with me. If you want to contact me, my email address is right here, vals@contentrules.com. And with that, I thank you and wish you a great rest of your conference.